Asylums, the place that are always portrayed in media with that one guy in a straitjacket talking to himself in a white padded room. This isn't entirely accurate, but it's not wrong either. I'm Sammy. I'm just a guy with a passion for mental health. Anyways, mental asylums began around the mid-1800s during a time where mental illness was seen as a religious issue. Pretty much everyone thought that if you were mentally ill, you were abandoned by God. And so it was like, if you got delusions, you were being spoken to by the devil, or if you got hallucinations, you were being spoken to by the devil. It was like, everything during that time was literally religion-oriented, and I am so glad that it's changed. Whenever people hear about mental asylums, they think of horrible things, and they aren't wrong, but something a lot of people, including myself before I did research, don't know, is that asylums were actually meant to be a safe space, and for a while, they did stay that way. A psychologist called Philip Pennell was the one who started a moral treatment program, the belief being that with things like good diet, exercise, and better hygiene, it would make the mental illness go away. The nurses even knew their patients on a personal level and had a designated paths for those patients, which is like therapy now. It is very, very similar to therapy now because psychologists and therapists, they know their patients and they ask you, what is your goal? What are you trying to get out of therapy? And they start making paths, getting to know their patients through those goals. I just find it funny how, like, we came full circle from the 1800s to now. It's just, wow. Anyways, this moral treatment program idea didn't last forever, unfortunately, because as the government funding began to decrease, the amount of patients majorly increased. Asylums went from places of refuge to pretty much free housing to those who struggled with mental illness. And honestly, I can't imagine this. I have such bad social anxiety. I have a hard time around people in general. Being stuck in a crowd is enough to make my heart pound. It must have been so hard being crammed in with strangers you didn't know and watching everyone go through such traumatic things while you yourself were also going through traumatic things. It sounds awful. These packed conditions and lack of funding and staff started to lead to the immoral treatment that's presented in the media today. Some treatments range from insulin shock therapy, where they would just inject a person with insulin and put them in a coma and repeat this process for weeks on end, to lobotomies. Now, when you hear lobotomy, you think, oh, okay, just cutting the skull open and chucking out parts of the brain that were causing the issues. That's awful. No. There were some lobotomies that ended up this way, but with new resources, Walter Freeman created a new method where they would literally take a tool, like an ice pick, shove it under your eyelid, hammer the end of it to break the bone, and freaking move the ice pick from side to side. And what's even worse, they didn't even properly sedate their patients. All they did was use electroconvulsive shocks and then do this to their patients. I am literally baffled that people thought this was acceptable during the time. You would think that shoving an ice pick under anyone's eyelid would be frowned upon, but nope. I guess it is important to know that during this time, everyone thought they were doing the right thing, but it just it gives me the heebie-jeebies. While all of this was going on, Dorothea Dix, who was a major advocate in mental health, toured these asylums and took really detailed notes on the conditions. She was one of the first advocates for the treatment of her patients. After taking notes and being shocked by the horrible treatments, because who can blame her, she presented these notes in court, which eventually led to the first asylum closing its doors in 1968, which, if you think about, wasn't that long ago. And that's a pretty basic idea on the history of mental asylums. I'm honestly surprised about how much I learned. I had no idea they were meant to be a safe space at first. Honestly, going through this makes me wonder what would qualify you to go into a mental asylum. Things like ADHD and autism were only just recently being researched. Was it only schizophrenic patients that were admitted, or those who suffered from psychosis delusions? What about, like, trauma disorders like borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder? It just really makes my gears turn. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this lovely video of me freaking out over lobotomies for like 20 seconds. This was a test run for a project, and hopefully it turns out well. Thanks for watching.